I'm really excited to talk to you because I know you just went to Mexico. And right now, I mean, I hate to say it, but all the rage right now is what's going on at the border with Mexico. Um, you just got back from what, 3-day trip?
So we were in Mexico for 3 days, and part of the reason was we've heard a lot of things that are going on in the news,
Yeah.
and people are migrating, and there's just been a lot of challenges in the news. And some of the things I've heard on the radio, on the news, is like, wow, could this possibly be true?
Yeah.
And to the extent, and should we be panicking, or just what is it like? So actually, 3.5 weeks ago now, I needed to go to San Diego for some meetings, and I decided to just hop on down to Mexico and take a look around. And I met some people.
Mm-hmm.
I met some folks who were working with veterans there. I met some people with a drop-in center that were working with families coming from Central America. And then as a result of that trip, our team decided that it would be good to go down for a little more time and interview some folks who had migrated to the border and find out what their situation was, to find out what their experience was like, whether or not they have legal representation,
Mm-hmm.
what their hopes and dreams are in coming to the border even.
Right. And so you're planning that. You're planning those interviews, or have you already done it?
So that's what that was 3 weeks ago, and then this past week for 3 days we went down and did exactly that. So we met with some of the folks that I had met 3 weeks ago, the drop-in center.
Yeah.
They took us to a shelter for Central American migrants
Mm-hmm.
who were families living in tents,
Yeah.
kind of in a warehouse, and we were able to 12 to 14 of them we interviewed just about their situation and what their hopes and aspirations are in coming to the border.
Yeah.
Talked to some other folks, talked to some Haitian men who, frankly, are building lives there in Tijuana.
Really?
It sounds to me like they have found some success in finding work there, and they get paid more in Tijuana than they get paid in Haiti. So they're working there when they can. They're doing construction work.
Mm-hmm.
Tijuana is a booming town, a booming city. There's a lot of construction going on, a lot of business, tourism. It's a big city.
Interesting. So those 12 to 14 interviews that you did do in the last few days, what was, and you were talking about kind of what was your hopes of coming to the border, maybe trying to get through? What was was there a common theme, or was it scattered all, you know what I mean? I'm curious I feel like it's so much emotion, and it's all over the news about hey, we're at this border. Some people want to get in. Some people we're saying no, and some people are like, well, that's good. Some people are like, that's bad, depending on your political views or just moral views, I guess. But what was I'm curious because I'm really excited for one, because like I was telling you earlier, you're actually there talking to people, and not many people have the opportunity to do that, and so I'm really excited for your perspective. So, and then their perspective as well. That's really cool. I didn't know you did all those interviews. So
yeah, there's definitely a theme going on. We talked to women and their children, but the women were from Guatemala, Honduras, and a couple were from southern Mexico, and the theme was that they were fleeing violence.
Interesting.
And so a couple of them told us that their partner or their husband had been beat up or killed by the drug cartels or the gangs that were controlling the communities.
Yeah.
So, and that their son had been threatened, and they were the gangs want the sons to join the gangs.
Gotcha.
So that's what's leading the fleeing their hometown, where they're from, their home country, and they head north with really the hope of what was interesting. People have a different perspective. Each of the people that we talked to, that the legal requirement in coming to the border is that you have to have a credible fear of returning home in order to apply for asylum at the border.
So to get through to America, you have to have a credible way to get back from America.
No, you have to have a credible fear
Oh,
that you fled.
Fear. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. All right.
So that's the difficulty is the Customs and Border Protection is there at the border, and when a migrant comes to the border, there's both international law and U.S. law that allows people to do that.
Gotcha.
At this point, with the current administration, there's a certain amount of resistance to allowing these interviews to happen. And that's what we're really testing, is that what's going on.
Gotcha.
And there's a good chance that we'll be going back and then accompanying people to the border to get those credible, fair interviews, and to see what that process is like. There are some attorneys at the border, but there's a lack of legal representation
just so overwhelmed
to make that happen, because there's a lot.
Yeah.
I've gone to Tijuana many times over the years, and it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't like people were camping everywhere. In fact, one of my friends who was with us said to me, "It's not like people are camping on the street," but there were a lot of people that once we got connected, we could talk to them. So there are people there. It's not the full-on crisis that you might be led to believe.
Right. And so, okay. One thing I want to point out that I think is hilarious is when I originally texted you about doing this podcast and maybe talking about your perspective, I said, I don't really like politics or religion. I kind of try to keep that out of this podcast. And brilliantly, you texted me almost immediately back, and you said, it's all politics and religion. That's all it is. So we're doing our best. But so you go down there. So ultimately the goal is, when you go back, is maybe to some of these people you met and maybe some of the other ones that you haven't. And by going to the border with them, is it ultimately just, hey, here's some credibility to their story, and then also to kind of view and kind of check mark and take a snapshot of what the situation is? Is that what? Am I reading the goal right?
Yeah, that's part of it. There's a couple things that we want to do. We want to provide a very high level, high quality legal advice to the people that we talk to, and that's what we were testing when we were down there. We brought one of our attorneys and one of our fully accredited immigration reps from my office to do the interviews and to witness what's going on.
Right.
And then to watch and observe that whole process with how the U.S. Border Patrol or the Customs and Border Protection, how well they comply with the current laws.
Right.
That's one of the things that we want to observe. And it's U.S. law. It's the Immigration Nationalization Act of 1965, paragraph 208. And
you've looked at it before.
It allows people to approach the border and ask for asylum.
Interesting.
And they can do it at the border. They can do it at sea. They can do it at an airport. They can come in on a tourist visa and apply anytime within a year.
Right.
So it's wide open for people to apply for asylum.
Gotcha. So you naturally, because for it to get to your desk, I assume it's a lot of I don't want to say severe cases, but it's a lot of, like you said, fear of violence, fear of, whether it be from Mexico or from the Mexican border coming up north, or you've done a lot of Middle Eastern stuff like that, haven't you?
So a lot of our refugees come from the Middle East, or in the recent past. They've come from Afghanistan and Iraq. Those are special immigrant visa holders who are people who come through the refugee system because they assisted the U.S. military in our war efforts in those countries. And because of that, they're given special immigrant visas, and they're able to come through the refugee program.
Interesting.
Others are being displaced by wars and things that are going on in their country, and people are being displaced because of the fear of violence and fear of persecution because of their race, their ethnic origin, their political views, their religion, or their social group that they're in. So what was really clear to me when I went down 3 weeks ago, the people that I talked to and that I saw, these are refugees. These are the same. It's the same legal definition to be a refugee as it is to be an asylum seeker. And those were the people who we were talking to and doing those interviews. The only difference is the United Nations isn't parked there doing interviews to use the State Department as a process to do refugee resettlement. In this case, they're arriving right at our border, so they're eclipsing part of that process.
Right. Where did you go? I feel like the picture that's painted by, I feel like a lot of people, especially my age, I'm 25, so a lot of the younger crowd, and I think a lot of on different just news outlets, is it's like a riot at the border. And so the picture that what I want to see is when you went down there, how hard was it to find, did you already have, did you have contacts upon going down there to look for these asylum seekers, or where did you, you know what I mean? What was that process look like? Was it just like, all right, let's go find some people? Or did you already have contacts and specific people of like, okay, we're going down to talk to them? You knew it ahead of time? Or was it totally a shot in the dark? Hey, let's go down there. We're going to find some people that really need it.
We absolutely had some connections. I reached out to some people that worked down at the border.
Gotcha. Okay.
And through those connections, they directed me to the drop-in center where a lot of the refugees arrive, and ask for services because their clothes are worn out and they need food and they need a place to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Through that organization, we were given access to the shelter where, I don't know, there were probably 50, 60, 70 tents set up indoors in this warehouse where people were staying, families with children. So it's through connections that I had, I reached out to. The border looks the same as it always has in terms of, there's a lot of people there.
Mm-hmm.
If you went down there, you could probably find people to talk to who are interested in moving to the United States.
Right.
Some will have that opportunity, others won't.
Mm-hmm. And your job is not only to help people get in, but really help people that really need it, huh? Yeah, is that part of your job? Is kind of weeding out? Are they credible? You know what I mean? Things like that.
I found that as we talk to different peoples in different groups, I mentioned that I talked to some Haitian men who were there. Their idea of moving to the United States was kind of vague and in their minds, but really what they were doing are building lives there. They're working on getting work permits to work in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
They're working on finding construction jobs in the economy that's supporting. There's a lot of cranes up in the air, buildings that are being built.
Really?
And so there were jobs for them. They like to explain to me that they were really good workers and they would work cheaper than the Mexicans, and they're really hard workers, which is kind of like the Mexicans who come here. They tell me that, oh, yeah, we're the really hard workers, unlike those Americans. Those are soft.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I've heard this story before.
Yeah.
So the migrants who are arriving there are actually helping build the economy because there's more people there. We actually ate at a Haitian restaurant, or a Haitian lunch spot, lonchera, which is just it's a place where workers come, and all they had was rice and fried chicken.
Hey, who's arguing?
That was the only thing, and they had some sauce to put on it.
Mm-hmm.
And we ate there with the workers. It was kind of a fun experience.
Interesting.
And they speaking French and Creole, and my team had English and Spanish, and these guys had actually, some of them had gone to Spanish classes, so we were listening to Spanish with a French accent, and they were listening to my horrible English accented Spanish.